At 0947, on March 18th, March 2021, a Moscow judge sentenced Viktor Shafranatov to 9 years. But rewind the tape just 11 years, and you'll find the exact second the world's most respected salerooms swallowed their first $32,000 lie. The verdict in reverse. That's where a story begins. Not with a bang, but with the slow, sickening suck of a clock running backward. The judge's lips unseal the word 7, then 9, then silence. Every tick rewinds 1 second. The gavel hovers, then rises, wood grain catching the light like a snarl. The bailiff's arm unlowers. Shafranatov's shackles click open in reverse, steel bracelets sliding back together as if magnetized by regret. I watch him step out of the defendant cage, backward, like a dancer refusing the final bow. And the crowd? Oh, the crowd. Every gasp is inhaled, every grimace smoothed into blank curiosity. The doors unshush. Security barriers part before us, like Moses at the Red Sea, only colder, bureaucratic. Out on Tverskaya Street, the police van backs up. Not forward, never forward. Its rear doors yawning open to swallow the man who does not yet know he will become legend. We ride backward through Moscow morning. Snowflakes rise from the windshield, ascending into clouds that haven't yet decided to weep. The radio unplays a news bulletin about, well, we'll circle back to that. Right now, the city is still innocent. 10 minutes rewind, then 20. The van passes the Kremlin walls, their red brick glowing like hot coals in reverse. At last we arrive at a nondescript office block on Massainitskaya Street. The van doors slam forward in reverse, and Shafranatov steps out. Younger, thinner, eyes bright with something we'd call ambition if we didn't know better. Inside, the elevator climbs down to the basement, doors opening onto a room that smells of solder and old coffee. This is March 18th, 2010, 0947. The timestamp glows green on a cheap digital recorder. And here comes the whisper that started it all. Viktor leans close to a microphone worth less than the lie he's about to tell. His breath fogs the mesh. Polygrom. Whisper. That's the word. 1 syllable. Infinite damage. The tape spools backward, but we hear it forward now. Polygrom, my friend. They'll never test the core. Huh. He chuckles. No, will chuckle at how easy it sounds. 32 grand for the first fake, commissioned by a man who collects history but never questions it. Behind him, a small crucible cools, its bronze skin hardening into something that never existed. The lie is born in reverse, which means it already lives. But rewind further, dear listener, and you'll see the forgery was not the beginning. The real crime began years earlier in a library basement that smelled of mold and forgotten genius. That's where Viktor first learned how to age bronze with nothing but vinegar and time, and that's where we'll go next. Unless, of course, the clock decides to stop spinning backward. But clocks are cruel. They never stop. Not for regrets, not for us. Which means our next stop is 2007. The year Viktor Shafranatov became a student of history's shadows. And trust me, you haven't heard anything yet. And so the hands spin backward, past the verdict and the chaos it left behind, until, clears throat, we find ourselves standing on the cold marble of Christie's South Kensington, the morning of May 14th, 2010. The air smells of coffee, expensive perfume, and the faint metallic tang of anticipation that always clings to auction houses. I can almost feel the tremor in my own pulse as we approach lot 47, the piece that never should have existed. The catalog pages flip past us like ghosts, page after page of provenance, of estimates, of names, but lot 47 never made it into print. The clerks simply forgot it, or pretended to. A $32,000 bronze of the Mother of God, 17th century, Russian school, and yet it sat there unloved, unbid, unclaimed. I remember the way the security guard's knuckles whitened around his radio when I asked about it. He said, "That one's not for sale." Not for sale, he said, as though the Virgin herself had stepped down and slapped a cease and desist on the whole affair. But let me rewind even tighter, because the story begins earlier, in the prep room behind the velvet curtain, where forensic lights hum like angry bees. The lab coat lifts the bronze with gloved hands and places it under the scanner. On the screen, a cross-section blooms, a halo of metal around a darker, resinous heart, hollow where it should be solid, dense where it should sing. The technician frowns. "We've got a resin core," she mutters. "Someone poured faith into polyester." At that exact moment, 3 streets away, a burner phone crackles to life in Shafranatov's pocket. He's pacing the parquet of a borrowed flat, shoes scuffing over someone else's dust. I can hear it all on the undercover tape, the hiss of static like serpents under the bed. "Listen," he says, voice velvet and venom at once. "If they x-ray the base, you smile." You smile like you've just seen heaven open. Then you tell them it's devotional restoration. "Say the pilgrims left candles too close. The heat cracked the metal. We filled it with prayer." The stooge on the other end swallows so loudly the mic picks it up. Shafranatov hears it too. "Good boy," he purrs. Faith buys forgiveness faster than cash. Back inside Christie's, the statue waits, serene in its deception. 2 curators circle it like wary sharks. One carries a loop the size of a small moon, the other a folder thicker than sin. They speak in murmurs, price codes, and the language of doubt. I hover at the fringe, pretending to admire a nearby icon, but my recorder is running. They decide, quietly, ruthlessly, to pull lot 47 from the sale. No announcement, no scandal, just a discreet red sticker slapped over the entry. The bronze never even reaches the rostrum. Shafranatov hears about the withdrawal within the hour. I know, because the next call is to the same stooge, now panicking. "They yanked it," the man stammers. "They know." But Shafranatov only chuckles, low and slow. "They know nothing," he says. "They feel something. That's different. Doubt is a fog, not a knife. We'll sell it elsewhere." And just like that, the bronze vanishes into a crate, padded with foam that smells faintly of frankincense and fear. The crate is labeled with a fake monastery crest, complete with Cyrillic script that translates roughly to "Gift of the Unburdened Heart." The irony tastes like iron filings on my tongue. By dusk, it's loaded onto a white van with Polish plates, the driver humming a hymn I don't recognize. The taillights disappear into London's sodium haze, and Lot 47 becomes a ghost once more. Yet here's the part that keeps me awake. The resin core was only the first layer of the lie. Beneath it, hidden even from the X-ray, sits a second cavity. Yet smaller, shaped like a key. Whatever Shafranatov planned to hide inside that mother of God never made it, because the statue was pulled. But he still has the key, which means somewhere, in some other bronze, maybe the one you passed in a gallery last week, maybe the one that's watching you right now. The key is waiting, and so are we. The key is still out there, and so are we. But before we can chase it, we have to go backward, because the bronze that will carry that key is still on the move. February 13th, 2013, the port of Riga. The tape crackles to life at 11:47 p.m. A gloved hand enters the frame, pries open the customs seal, and the red wax peels away in perfect reverse, as though time itself rewinds for Shafranatov's convenience. Inside container 8 Bravo, 87 bronzes stand shoulder to shoulder, like a silent battalion. Madonnas, horsemen, and one hollow-eyed shepherd the size of a child. They're wrapped in nothing but thin foam and hubris. A Latvian customs officer leans in, his lapel mic hot. We hear the crinkle of fresh euros, 50 notes at a time, licking his thumb between counts. 2,000 so far, he whispers, breath fogging the lens. Keep talking, and I'll forget the paperwork. The bribe lands with the soft finality of snowfall. Then the choreography begins. A panel truck backs up, tires crunching salt. 4 men, 3 in reflective vests, 1 in a tailored coat too thin for the weather, slide each statue along aluminum rails. The bronzes don't clink. The foam muffles everything, even history. In 32 minutes, the container is empty, resealed with a brand new seal, and the truck is already rolling for Rotterdam. I've studied the shipping manifests until my eyes burned. The same container, 8 Bravo, appears the next morning on a different manifest, now marked decorative ironwork. Decorative ironwork, worth 15.7 million if you melt it down and call it Romanesque. By dawn, the truck meets the cargo ferry, Venta Maersk. Rotterdam's cranes greet it like old conspirators. The statues vanish into the endless geometry of colored containers. Blue, orange, rust, blue. Somewhere between stacks 5 and 6, container 8 Bravo becomes 9 Charlie. Same weight, same dimensions, different soul. The Rotterdam to London leg is the shortest, only 12 hours across a slate-gray North Sea. Yet that leg is where the first ghost appears in the data, a single kilogram discrepancy. 1 bronze lighter or 1 bronze heavier? The paperwork blames scale calibration, which is smuggler speak for we added the key. London Gateway accepts the cargo at 9:05 a.m. under overcast skies. Customs there wave it through in 43 seconds, record time. I replayed the CCTV 12 times. The officer never even looks inside. A nod, a tap on the tablet. 9 Charlie rolls onto the M25 toward a bonded warehouse embarking. But it never arrives. Somewhere near Thurrock, the GPS blips offline for 7 minutes. When it returns, the truck's weight has shifted by exactly 4.7 kilograms, the mass of 1 shepherd statue, plus the key nested in its hollow thigh. Those missing minutes are the blind spot where Shafranatov's true courier emerges, neither Latvian nor British, neither customs nor criminal, just a driver with no last name and a fake tachograph. Geneva comes last. The route arrow pulses on my overlay like a dying heartbeat. Over the Alps, through the Mont Blanc tunnel, the Bronzes ride in climate-controlled luxury. Swiss customs receives them as artistic antiquities for private exhibition, duty-free because they're supposedly on loan from a Riga museum that no longer exists. It never did. Tonight the statues sit in a Freeport vault 6 levels below ground. Level 6 has no cameras, only motion sensors keyed to the weight of human bodies, not bronze. Which means tomorrow, when the vault opens and the shepherd is lifted out, no lens will catch the moment the key slides from its hollow calf into the palm that has waited 7 centuries. But here is where the tape ends. One final hiss of static, and the screen goes black. No timestamp, no location stamp. Just the echo of that Latvian officer counting euros like a liturgy. Somewhere between the North Sea fog and the Swiss vault, the shepherd, and its hidden key, slipped through every net we thought we had. And if it can vanish that cleanly, what else is already gone? So the screen goes black, and I'm left staring at my own reflection in the dark glass, wondering how a shepherd can just walk away from a crate full of evidence. But then the tape rewinds, fast, faster, until we're back in summer, back in heat, back at the source. August 6th, 2015. A dacha outside Tula, cicadas screaming like faulty Geiger counters. I wasn't there, but the undercover officer, call him Pavel, because that's what the transcript calls him. He was inside the kitchen, button mic blinking under the 3rd shirt button. And the bronze? It was still liquid. Viktor Shafranatov stands over the pot like a chef who never learned the recipe. He's wearing these ridiculous oven mitts, gardening gloves wrapped in aluminum foil, and he's humming an old Soviet cartoon theme. Pavel clears his throat, pretends to admire a samovar on the shelf, and asks, "So, how old does this one pretend to be?" Victor doesn't blink. 300 years, he says, in 3 days. The arrogance drips thicker than the molten bronze. He flips a page in a spiral notebook, graph paper, coffee stains shaped like Crimea, and points to a column of numbers. 1035 Celsius, he recites, exactly the temperature where 17th century sand molds cracked. The thermal camera overlay, yes, they brought a thermal camera because Interpol was footing the bill, shows a perfect bloom of orange against the black crucible. It's the temperature of forgery, the color of deceit. Now the molds. They're not plaster, not silicone. Victor uses polyester resin mixed with pine sawdust because pine was cheap and resin yellows just right. He pours it like pancake batter into silicone skins taken from a real, museum-quality piece he borrowed. Don't ask how. and then he clamps the halves together with woodworking bar clamps. The smell is Christmas and cancer at the same time. Pavel asks, "Doesn't resin shrink?" Viktor grins. "That's the trick. I leave it in the sauna overnight. 80 degrees, 90% humidity. It swells, then shrinks again. By morning, the cracks look 3 centuries old. There's a rhythm to the work. Pour, rock the crucible, skim the dross, whisper a curse in 3 languages. English for the buyers, French for the catalog, Russian for the soul. Sometimes he says a real prayer, just in case the saints are watching." Between pours, he dabs the surface with a vinegar-soaked rag, laced with ammonium chloride. "Green spots," he explains. "Copper disease." Patina and fast forward. He shows Pavel a toothbrush flecked with turquoise. Electric toothbrush works best. Oscillates at 31,000 RPM. Same as centuries of rain. The absurdity is almost beautiful. But the aging room? That's where the magic, or the curse, lives. A root cellar dug under the potato patch. Walls lined with salt blocks and cedar shavings. Temperature steady at 12 degrees. Humidity locked at 45. Bronze statues stand on terracotta saucers like potted plants. A cheap aquarium pump pushes air through a jar of rotten eggs and water. Sulfur drifts across the faces of saints and tsars alike. The stench is medieval. Viktor lifts a Madonna the size of a bowling pin. She was born on Monday, he boasts. By Thursday, she'll weep verdigris. He taps her cheek with a gloved knuckle. The metal rings like a dull bell. Pavel asks, timid, "What if someone cuts her open?" Viktor's smile vanishes. "They won't. I leave the core hollow, just enough bronze to fool the scales. An X-ray sees a statue, not a confession." The night winds down. They douse the burner, sweep the filings into a jar labeled fishing weights, drink pepper vodka out of chipped enamel cups. Pavel's hand trembles. Viktor notices. "Relax," he whispers. "We're just borrowing history." But the recorder keeps rolling, and the clock on the wall shows 3 minutes past 2. Somewhere outside, a dog barks once and stops, as if embarrassed. Because here's what Pavel still doesn't know. The next batch isn't Madonnas or angels or even a swaggering Peter the Great on horseback. It's something smaller, something common enough to pass customs without blinking, yet priceless enough to anchor a new legend. Viktor already has the sketches. He calls it The Little Shepherd, and it's hollow just like all the others, except this one has a cavity shaped exactly like a key. And tomorrow, when the bronze cools, he'll slide that key inside, seal it with wax, and bury the statue in a crate marked Religious Souvenirs. If you've been following, you know what happens next. The shepherd vanishes between Riga and Rotterdam. The key vanishes with it, and somewhere in a Swiss vault, a door stays locked. But that's still ahead of us. Right now, the statue is still warm. The resin is still soft, and the secret is still liquid. And tomorrow, the forger mails himself a postcard that simply reads, "Package ready." No signature, no return address, just 2 words and a postmark that hasn't been stamped yet. That postcard arrived in a plain brown envelope, no return label, just a Latvian postmark and 2 words in block capitals on the back. Package ready. I held it to the light. The ink was still tacky. Somewhere between Riga and Rotterdam, the shepherd had cooled, the resin had hardened, and 3 courier vans raced toward 3 separate auction houses, like well-behaved missiles. This was the moment the Shafranatov triplets were born. 1 statue split into 3 fates. I picture the calendar page tearing itself off, April 21st, 2018. Sotheby's, Bonhams, Christie's, all circled in the same red felt tip. Each sale room thought they had an exclusive masterpiece. Each catalog trumpeted a fresh-to-market 19th century Caucasian shepherd with staff. The irony is, none of them noticed the other 2 announcements until it was far too late. Their marketing teams were already polishing press releases while the forger, somewhere in Zurich, laughed into his espresso. By the time the vans reached the loading docks, the sting was humming like a beehive. Interpol had slipped microdots onto shipping manifests, tiny lenses into customs forms, a whole constellation of breadcrumbs. The agents weren't after the statue anymore. They wanted the moment it spoke. So they swapped 1 crate in the Sotheby's vault. Just 1. A perfect twin, but with a voice. Inside that vault, tension tasted metallic. The expert arrived, name redacted, voice disguised. She wore white cotton gloves so thin they looked like frost. She circled the shepherd, lifted a loop, and then hesitated. She leaned closer, almost tender, and whispered into the gloom, "This one feels off." Off. The statue was wired, and her whisper detonated across 4 continents. Meanwhile, across town, Bonham's lab hummed with digital energy. X-ray plates slid into lead-lined drawers, chemical spectra spiked like EKGs. Their technician spotted the same casting seam running from ankle to staff, a ghost ridge identical to the one in the Christie sample. He blinked, checked the timestamp, and muttered, "No way that's coincidence." He was right, but not in the way he hoped. Christie's team was already on Zoom with a Swiss metallurgist who swore the alloy mix, 86% copper, 11% tin, 3% arsenic, was textbook late 19th century Caucasus. Oh, what they didn't know was the forger had melted down period church bells to match the trace elements. The past was literally singing inside the fake. Back at Sotheby's, the agents held their breath. The bugged shepherd was now center stage, and every footstep echoed through a wire, thinner than spider silk. They heard trolleys squeak, muffled coughs, and then a phone ringing once, twice, then silence. Someone had received a warning. Someone inside. 43 minutes later, all 3 houses synchronized their final catalogs for print. The dates aligned like planets. Lot 39 at Sotheby's, Lot 104 at Bonhams, Lot 72 at Christie's, all scheduled within 72 hours. The forger had orchestrated a 3-note chord across the auction world, and the agents were the only ones who could hear the harmony. If they timed it wrong, the chord would resolve into a scream. By midnight, each statue rested under armed guard, but the guards couldn't see what was coming. The forensic team overlaid the X-rays, layer upon layer, until the seams aligned so perfectly they formed a single luminous thread. 1 sculpture, 3 places, infinite questions. And at the center of that thread, a tiny red dot blinked on a satellite map, the postal box in Zurich, where tomorrow's postcard would be mailed. I still hear that whisper, "This one feels off," echoing in the vault like a confession. It was the moment the statue betrayed itself. The moment the past cracked open, but the bigger crack was still coming, because while the agents celebrated their perfect sting, a 4th crate, unregistered, unnumbered, unaccounted for, was already moving toward a private jet at Geneva Airport. And this one wasn't bugged. This one was the real shepherd. Or maybe it wasn't. We'll find out tomorrow, when the Swiss vault door finally opens, and the key, well, let's just say the key has opinions of its own. The key, it turned out, was a red herring. Not red, really. More like a dull brass that refused to shine. I stood outside the Geneva Freeport on a morning so cold the breath froze before it left my mouth, watching customs agents wheel that unregistered crate into blazing daylight. They pried the lid with a crowbar and found exactly what Shafranatov said they'd find. Nothing. Just straw, a handful of iron nails, and a postcard of the Hermitage glued to the inside like a taunt. The shepherd had never left Moscow. It was always a ghost story we told ourselves so we could sleep. Fast forward to a Monday that smelled of wet asphalt and old secrets. Shafranatov sat opposite me, yes, me, at a folding table in Lefortovo prison, cuffs flashing under a single bulb. He signed the restitution papers with the same fountain pen he once used to forge provenance letters. The guard told him to hurry up. The ink might freeze. Viktor, ever the showman, asked for a moment to savor the flourish. Then he dotted the last I and said, "Tell them the metal remembers everything, even the lies." 487 bronzes. That's what they wheeled into Warehouse 12 on the edge of Moscow. Row after row of smirking fawns, leaping horses, and laurel-crowned poets. The director of the seized property division wore a hazmat suit the color of dishwater and kept muttering, "We could melt them into manhole covers and nobody would know." The furnaces roared like caged lions, and each statue went in head first, as if bowing to its own execution. I watched Apollo lose his face, Hermes lose his wings, and somewhere in the hiss of vaporizing wax, I thought I heard laughter that wasn't mine. Numbers rolled across the radio, while I walked the perimeter fence. 17 museums, 42 private collectors, $15.7 million. The victims' names were never spoken aloud, just alphabetized in a footnote. But I carried them in my pocket on a folded sheet, the paper soft from handling. Each time a droplet of fake bronze hit the cooling tray, I crossed one off. By dusk, the list was a red smear. Then came the final tape, delivered to my hotel room in a padded envelope lined with newspaper cuttings about the scandal. I slid the cassette into the battered recorder I'd carried since Riga, pressed play, and heard the crackle of a prison phone. Victor sounded tired, older, like a man who had finally run out of disguises. He asked, "Tell me, which one fooled you longest?" I stared at the wall, searching for an honest answer, and realized the shepherd had never fooled me at all. It was the story I wanted to believe, that art could outrun greed, that beauty could save us from ourselves. I told him the truth. The one that fooled me longest was the silence after every sale, the quiet rooms where no alarm ever rang. He laughed then, a dry rasp like sandpaper on stone, and said, "Silence is the perfect alloy, stronger than bronze, lighter than gilt." The line clicked dead. Outside, snow began to fall, soft as ash. The last furnace cooled at 3 minutes past midnight. A single droplet clung to the lip of the crucible, glowing the deep gold of sunset over the Black Sea. I stood there until it finally let go, falling in an arc so slow it felt eternal. In that instant, I saw every fake ever poured, every lie ever told, every collector who swore the patina felt right. Then the light went out, and the droplet hardened into nothing special, just another pebble on a warehouse floor. But here's what I still can't melt, the memory of Victor's question echoing in the dark, asking which mask stayed on longest. Because the answer is none. They all slipped, one by one, until only the question remained, bright and unforgiving as that final drop of metal. And tonight, when the city lights blink off and the river runs black, I swear I can still hear it cooling. Tick, 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 like a clock that keeps perfect fake time. Maybe that's the real masterpiece Shafranatov forged. Not the bronzes, but the moment we realized they were never the point at all.